Jack.
Levi.
The Book Club from Hell.
Welcome to the Book Club from Hell. We're about to have an immersive experience where we jump inside of a headset for a DJI drone and start
Fly it into a group
flying.
of people.
Yeah. Dropping bombs
in Minecraft.
in a city Australian suburbs. No, in Minecraft.
Yeah, only in Minecraft. Last week, was it last week or was it 2 weeks ago? We got paused by reading
Yeah, no, it was last week.
Viral Fantasies, the bug chasing book. So this time we're getting
like a long
queered
time
by
ago,
drone
but it was
warfare.
last week. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that's a good progression. Getting paused and then getting queered by hunter-killer drones. So this is Drone Disorientations by Cara Daggett, published in 2015, while she was a PhD candidate at Johns Hopkins University, completing her PhD in political science. So this is not from a minor organization. And it's an unusual article. I mean, I guess that's why I can't even remember how I came across this article. I know why I picked it, because the premise of the article I found very, very promising. That basically using queer theory to understand drone warfare, particularly the use of hunter-killer drones, like, drone striking Pakistani weddings and other important tools to maintaining global security. And the effect that has on hegemonic masculinity by disorienting, opening up queer lines of flight from heteronormative hegemony.
And disorientation creates an entry point for queer political analysis of warfare.
Precisely. Yeah. And I was actually looking forward to it. I feel like it underdelivered a bit. It was a bit too word salad and didn't quite have enough of the goods. Unlike the eroticizing HIV article, which I felt like actually really dialed back the word salad, but delivered a lot of goods. Anyway, so it's interesting. We get to read two kind of post-structuralist tinged social sciences publications back to back. And, compare and contrast. Anyway, what were we opening up with? Yeah, we're the Book Club from Hell. If you like what we're doing here, we've got a Patreon account where you can get posed by us and queered by us via drone and via Discord. What else? I published a novel called Tower, which is on Amazon. I've got a Substack as well. You can read the first few chapters for free.
Also got a pay-to-play.
Yeah, exactly.
On Patreon. Pay to pause.
I probably shouldn't. I probably should have saved more of the just the pause comments for our episode actually on getting paused, because unless someone has listened to our previous episode, this won't make much sense. Just very passionate about HIV. So we were talking about how to approach this episode before recording. How we normally structure things is we'll have a hook. So why should someone read this? Then we'll talk about the context and the problem situation faced by the author. So what set of problems, what's the terrain of possible problems that this author is addressing? We ran into the problem that this book is so word salad that, that I think both of us have slightly differing opinions on what the author was actually trying to do.
Yeah, I'm still not entirely sure. Maybe by the end of this conversation, I'll have a better sense of what their problem situation actually was.
I've got a theory. I'm reading the queer aluminium plate drone tea leaves, and I think I kind of know what she's getting at. But
okay.
I'm also not. I'm not sure. Someone could easily persuade me otherwise. It's a very, very loosely held conviction. So we'll be going through these things in a slightly different way today, in that we're going to be, instead of saying this is what the problem situation is, we're probably going to be debating what the problem situation is.
Yeah, trying to figure it out.
Trying to work it out. Anyway, I think the hook's pretty easy. It's queer drone warfare. Drone warfare, the act of drone warfare is destabilizing the hegemonic masculinity of of military structures, of the kill chain, of the warrior archetype, and opening up or revealing new lines of flight for queering the world. It's probably also something we'll have to talk about is, what does this author mean when she says things like queer, heterosexual, homosexual? Because they're not used in a sense that I think someone would conventionally understand them to mean. If you approached someone on the street and asked them, what does heterosexual mean? They're probably going to offer a pretty different definition to at least what this woman is implicitly using, because she never quite defines what these terms mean. Which, to be fair, this is an academic work. She'll be writing for people who are better versed in queer theory than I am. So I don't necessarily begrudge her that.
It's in the International Feminist Journal of Politics, so I'm sure it's situated within an audience that are just totally across all this stuff.
Yeah. So that's there's the hook. Expectations going into this. How are you feeling about queer drone warfare?
I was personally looking forward to it because I find drone warfare to be a very I'm still coming to terms with the fact that it's a thing. I could imagine that when, you know, an example that she uses, or an example from the Sovereign Individual, is like when cannons were first used in Italy to just like blast apart castle walls, that people who heard about that new thing were probably a bit shaken, thinking, wow, all of our previous approaches to war now have to reorient around this new technology.
Yeah, they've just gone obsolete overnight.
And then if you queer the cannon in, you know, pre-Renaissance Italy or whatever, whenever it was, like, what does it mean for, at a distance, a giant cylindrical piece of iron to be injecting an iron ball into a large wall or walls of the home ground.
One would even say the walls are penetrated, perhaps.
Penetrating the walls.
Ferrous ejaculate.
The feminine home protected by the walls of the castle. So it must have been very queering of peasants living in rural Italy, in rural Umbria or something, 500 years ago.
As history reveals. I guess.
So I was looking forward to it from that perspective, and I am kind of drone warfare is weirdly interesting to me, and then just queer theory. Like, I've been around a lot of people who have done their PhDs or studies, whatever, in stuff like this, similar to this, and so I kind of know. And kind of knew what I was getting myself into, like, there's going to be a bunch of word salad and very specific uses of them. So I was interested to see exactly how much they would overcomplicate drone warfare.
Yeah, there is. I know so shout out to Master on Discord, who said that, you know, we should really, really try to focus on first talking about what is actually in the text that we've read, and then going on to criticisms, and I'll very much be trying to do that here. I just want to state that, then immediately break what I'm saying I'm going to do by just offering a small criticism in general of these word salad articles, where they're doing themselves no favors by making the writing so incredibly convoluted. Like, perhaps they're impressing each other, maybe. Like, maybe if you've invested so much time into really learning how to decode these completely abstruse sentences, you almost feel that other people should have to do the same because you did. But in terms of being able to spread information to the broader population, beyond your 0.5% of the population or whatever, it's not very helpful. Like, I find it a lot of the time actually profoundly unhelpful, because it's not a complexity that I feel is load-bearing. So in a certain novels, if you want to convey confusion to the reader, you can write in a confusing way with confusing prose to get that effect. But if you're sincerely trying to impart, I guess, semantic information, like, you know, what is ultimately really important in this paper is the information contained semantically in the words, rather than in a novel where a lot of it is in the prose, you know, it's almost that meaning lying between the words, then you probably should try to be a bit more clear. Anyway, I'll criticism over. I'll get back on topic. My expectations. I repeat, I don't remember where I found this, but clearly the premise attracted me enough that I suggested it. I was really looking forward to this because I think I've got a reasonable tolerance, especially for someone who's not of the social sciences or of political science and so on in an academic setting. I have fairly high tolerance for this sort of navel gazing. I tend to enjoy it. Like I'll often I read this kind of stuff for fun. I'm just sufficiently brain damaged. So I was going into it feeling pretty good. The premise is really strong. It sounded like she was going to smash Anti-Oedipus or 1,000 Plateaus into 2015 era drone warfare, which sounds good. I like the sound of that. So I was feeling good about this. Also, it's a shorter work. I think the total length is 20 pages, but then once you get rid of the bibliography and all of that stuff, I think it was just like 15, 16 pages. So it was really easy. I was feeling great, and I think some of my problems with it probably come from confounded expectations. I was expecting to enjoy it a lot more than I actually did.
I think that's a reasonable expectation. The premise, it's got a good premise.
Yeah, solid premise. It's sort of like watching a movie where the premise sounds amazing. The first 10 minutes are amazing, and then the author shows how often I interact with film. The people involved in making the film just kind of fuck it up. I'm not saying this article is that bad. Like, it's not a complete write-off. It's still pretty good.
It's
like, I'd say
intelligible
this is like a 7 out of 10. A good 7 out of 10. I was expecting much more though because of the premise.
Yeah. I think if you removed all of the... Anyways, let's get into it.
Let's get into it, yeah.
The context is basically in... Well, it started a lot earlier than 2015, but this was written in 2015, published in 2016, I think. And... you have these... Everybody, I assume, at this point would have seen on, news media or YouTube or whatever, these black and white images, like videos of, from aerial footage of, I don't know, a barn or an apartment block. And then it's like
just suddenly
5
explodes.
seconds and then just explodes.
Yeah.
It's like, and maybe the camera shakes a little bit or something. And that's the type of drone that we're going to be talking about. Is this what are referred to as hunter killer drones, but basically manned, remote piloted drones that can drop payloads on a target. Potentially from the other side of the planet, like somebody in an Air Force base in Nevada or whatever, dropping payloads on somebody in Afghanistan.
Dropping hot pos loads.
Yeah, hot pos loads, delivering hot pos loads straight to their barn door. And then also all the surveillance that's involved around that. So there's oftentimes like to probably identify and isolate the target and then understand when they can actually hit the target and all that sort of stuff, whilst at least ostensibly trying to minimize collateral damage, or so they say. That's the sort of drone warfare we're talking about, although we will discuss, once we've gone through the text, some other new types of drone warfare. But I'll just say that that stuff started, like, obviously a lot earlier, as far as I'm aware, at least as early as like the Second Iraq War, right? So I remember very vividly being indoctrinated into the US military complex machine. With
Call of Duty 4.
With Call of Duty.
Modern Warfare, the AC-130 gunship.
Yeah. And just in hindsight, thinking back, like, wow, that is such a profoundly strange form of American US propaganda to have.
It was so fucking good, that mission. 14-year-old Jack was laughing that up.
Loving it. And just going, we're bombing some Afghanis or something from like they're like getting there's like acclimating you to just
I should
the
know
disembodied
that,
killing of people on the other side of the world.
I'm pretty sure. So I just want every listener to know I'm an expert on everything military, and I definitely know what I'm talking about. Talking about anything in the military. I'm pretty sure the AC-130, it's just this gigantic fucking plane with people actually in it, and it's got like artillery pieces sticking out of the plane. So that Call of Duty mission was still warming us up because it wasn't a fully queered warfare. Because
it wasn't fully remote.
We'll get to the compass. The what is the distance intimacy, the home combat compass.
Yeah,
this was still you were still placed more into the combat part of that. It wasn't totally remote,
and you were still at much better proximity than being in Nevada. You were still at least like in the airspace.
Yeah, in the air.
So yeah, that was a primer leading up to the eventual establishment of, you know, completely at a distance, unmanned. Eventually it'll get to the point, again, leave that till a little bit later, but where presumably you won't even have them being manned at all. They'll just have like a machine
Just know what your
vision.
face looks like.
yeah. That's a human. Kill it.
Yeah.
Just full on like T-1000 kill mode, Skynet things. But we're not quite there yet, as far as I'm aware. But
it's not even T-1000 kill mode, because that was very cinematic. One of the most unsettling things about drone warfare is just how matter of fact it is. So, you know, you've got that grainy picture for, you know, above a barn or something, and the barn just explodes, and that's it.
Yeah,
like you don't have a humanoid robot chasing people down or any sort of drama to it. It's just like you just delete someone. It's extremely chilling. It's
deleted from existence.
Truly horrific.
Maybe like half their family's bodies just like strewn across the street, and you just see like people run out and like look at a crater and just like, what the you know, like it's really unnerving.
You on the other side of the world just take a deep slurp of what is it, Mountain Dew. Red Alert.
Yeah scratch your balls, like reposition
scream some
your balls.
gamer words.
Got him.
It is.
So
we'll get on to
that's
talking.
the context.
Yeah, that's the context.
Which is, to be fair, I'm just going to say at the top of the episode, and while we're talking about the context, that is a genuinely unnerving form of warfare.
Oh, 100%. The author's choice of subject matter is great. I mean, that was what made me pick this. Drone warfare is so terrifying. It is increasing. Just the technological capability of it is increasing so rapidly. The cost is going through the floor. I mean, you now have Ukraine. We'll talk about drone warfare now later on. But, you know, as a taster, I mean, at the time of writing, I think most drone warfare was still with these incredibly expensive weapon systems owned by nation states. Now you've got, like, people will strap a grenade onto
DJIs, mate.
Yeah. They'll strap, like...
racer drones.
Some bombs to a drone they bought off Amazon or Temu or whatever, and then fly it into a person. Or into... like into a Russian tank or something. You know? It's fucked.
And now you've got a proliferation of anti-drone defense weaponry and stuff. So
I saw this one of you've got a tank, and on the turret, you know, the swivelly bit, whatever it's called. I'm a military genius. On the swivelly bit, they've just got like this cage. This guy's saying, "Yeah, it stops the drones most of the time." You know, what can you do?
What if we just put a cage on it? So that's the context, and I suppose it also at the time. I don't know if I'm misremembering this. You know, this is 10 years ago at this point, and I'm Australian. But
Please don't say that. I still remember 2015 pretty clearly.
Yeah. I think we were pretty absorbed in our studies, so maybe we weren't like tuned into it as much. But I think that there's these kind of cycles where you have an increase in, I guess, discourse and oftentimes critical public discourse around footage that's coming out of different wars. So the really big one in recent memory was like Vietnam, and all the war photography that really came out that just really like caused a lot of public backlash in the US and Western countries around like, wow, we're this is what we're doing in Vietnam. And I think the same stuff happened in the Gulf Wars. And I saw this one incredible like photo my ex-partner had of taken by her father, who was in the US military, from an F-16 fighter jet flying over the Gulf, over Kuwait when the oil fields were on fire. And it's like crazy just to see these war images, and you're like, wow, that was actually how this entire desert, and there's like this other F-16 fighter in the shot, and it's just an incredible shot. I mean, it's one of those photos where it's just like, whoa. Anyways, slight detour. Yeah, so I think with this drone stuff, the particularly chilling thing about this stuff, which we've already touched on a bit, is how impersonal it is, and how especially at the time, and we'll get more into this in a bit, but there's this conversation of like, well, the people performing this stuff are so far away, so they're so safe, and yet they're causing so much damage. And it has sparked up this conversation in the US around, and I think everywhere else around, like, okay, like, what does it even mean to be going to war with a country when we're on the other side of the planet, we're completely safe, and we're just like lighting up their villages? This is not really war. The only thing that I can think of that is piece of literature that is kind of reminiscent of the same sort of questions is I don't know if you remember at the in the opening chapter of Heart of Darkness, Thomas Conrad, that like
Joseph Conrad,
yeah, where they've got the cannons just firing out from the side of the boat.
French ship sitting off the coast where they just go mad and start shooting their guns into the forest. Yeah,
and it's like, we don't. They're in there, so we're just gonna blow it to pieces. and he's like, oh my god, like this. Yeah, and that's what they did. Like all during colonization, is you just sit off. It's like, that's one of the US's like greatest military victories in like Argentina, was that they had cannons that could shoot.
Wasn't that the British? Was that the Falklands?
The Falklands, yeah, was it the British? Yeah, like they could shoot 30 miles or whatever, like 10 miles, and the Argentinian or whatever like could only shoot 8. So you just hit like just outside of their range. So there's this. I think the thing
is, if your enemy's got a technological edge on you in war, it's
kind of fucked.
Doesn't matter how brave you are.
Yeah, and so I think it's like, just to broaden the context a little bit, is like, yes, it's 2015, this new thing. But I would say it's part of a broader context of like these shifts in military technology and how it changes the nature of warfare each time. And you can see there's actually a historical precedence of people in, maybe not like writers, or in this case an academic, kind of trying to make sense of this new paradigm in war. Like I'd even say Junger and a lot of his, like, obviously his
yeah.
He was really engaging in this, like the industrial technologization of the war machine. So it's interesting to read another one of those, but through a queer lens. Yeah. Did you have anything else to add to the context?
To the context, I mean, I've just kind of got a slight a criticism, or what I wish this article did a bit more of, because like you said, the emergence of drone warfare is not discontinuous with the development of military technology throughout history.
Yeah.
Whereas the author of this article treats it as if it's fundamentally different, and different to the point where it disorients those involved in it. And I think that happens with basically every large technological shift. But what I would have found more compelling is if she'd actually looked through history at other times when just paradigmatically different military technologies emerged. Like, the cannon. So now we can shoot big projectiles a long distance. Or
that was a big one.
Yeah, or military aircraft, or a tank, or automatic weapons. Things like that.
Yeah, the machine
that
gun.
really, really changed the nature of warfare. Or say in the Second World War, where the German military worked out how to closely coordinate, say, ground troops, tanks, and aircraft was a really huge change. I would have liked it if she actually looked at those things where we have data, say what it was like before, what it was like during, what it was like after, and examined if they queered things and opened new lines of flight. I feel like that would have been more useful than what was done here, where she just kind of says it might queer things. I don't know. Maybe it will.
Is queering something an active process? I guess maybe now we can get into the problem situation.
Yeah, let's get into the problem situation
and the discussion or debate.
So, how about that? I've got a theory as to what she might have been trying to do with this article. I'll tell it to you, and you can tell me how accurate you think it is. So, we currently live in a world where you've got heterosexuality, and she'll use heterosexuality to both mean, like men and women who like having sex with each other, but more abstractly, an attachment to a hierarchical and fixed set of identities. This part was feeling quite Deleuze and Guattari. So yeah. So sort of heterosexuality is when people are, or society is, really trading in coded or over-coded molar identities. And if people are better versed in this stuff and don't agree with me, please read the article and tell me what heterosexuality means in this context. But this is how I read it. So that's heterosexuality. Homosexuality and queerness in this context are basically things which subvert those fixed identities and subvert that hierarchy of identities. So, within a heterosexual paradigm, there is going to be oppression of those things which are seen as other, which don't fit into the hierarchy neatly, or which sit at the bottom of the hierarchy, which are those things that are queer or homosexual. What this author is looking for is lines of flight from heterosexuality, or from what she calls hegemonic masculinity, which I just took as kind of not quite synonymous with heterosexuality, but the really emphasizing the hierarchical, domineering, fixed nature of heterosexuality. So looking for ways out of this, looking for ways to reduce oppression of the queer and the homosexual within our current paradigm. And drone warfare is something that allows this. So her problem situation is basically living in a heterosexual, hegemonically masculine environment and looking for a way out of that. Drone warfare being one possible option. How does that sound to you?
That sounds pretty reasonable. I guess that if that is a reasonable way to frame or to summarize,
I just want to emphasize to listeners, I'm not confident that I got it right.
Yeah, I guess the question for me is, to what end? Why is she doing this?
There are a few bits where she just says,
for the fun of it?
Yeah, we're going to have less oppression.
For some reason.
And that's it. Yeah, I guess if you take... It's okay, so, we'll just put aside, what's oppression? What does it look like? Just all of this stuff, we'll just put... we'll put these unimportant questions to the side. Yeah, I guess, so...
Yeah.
Am I misrepresenting you when I say what you're asking is, okay, what's getting rid of the oppression for, or say moving from that for?
I guess no, it's a two-part question. It's like, how does quote-unquote queering drone warfare?
Oh, well, lucky for you, we've got a whole article going over how queer drone warfare does that.
Yeah, and I still don't think she still hasn't connected the dots for me about how exactly it's like step 1, queer the drones, step 2, ? Step 3, less oppression.
No, but Levi, this is where you're wrong. We're not queering the drones. The drones are queering us. And I'm only being somewhat facetious. I think that actually is what she's saying.
That is what she said. Like the structural subversiveness of drones and how the spatiotemporal and physical dynamics of conducting drone warfare actually subvert entrenched, long-standing heteronormative cultural conceptions of war and how it is conducted and by whom is a portal through which the queering of war can enter this assemblage of machines and culture and human minds and bodies. So you kind of like, so I guess I'll just add a little bit to the problem situation discussion, which is I still don't know why she's doing this. Like I guess it's like why are you doing this? Like I don't understand why you're taking up a place at Johns Hopkins University to write this article.
Yeah, look, I'm trying not to be too dismissive. It'll be a question that I do want to talk about later, which is basically why didn't I enjoy this when I do genuinely enjoy a lot of debatably frivolous post-structuralist masturbation. So what is it about some other types of this work that I like, whereas this one left me kind of cold? I'm not totally sure. I do want to try to work that out. Okay. So problem situation.
So, I guess I'll just add one little bit of extension to it, just a little bit to contextualize for people who don't know this word. What do we mean by queering? So queering something is basically analyzing or interpreting whatever the thing is through the lens of like explicitly challenging traditional understandings or conceptions of gender and sexuality in particular, but then because those are such deep institutions or whatever within a society, that ricochets into having broader effects on the way that you might interpret sort of like a cultural, institutional or societal structure. And so by one other important part is that by doing this reframing, you can highlight what aspects of, say, the situation, people or whatever, are being marginalized or oppressed or whatever. And some of the I've got 3 key points about queering, which is you challenge norms. So you're questioning norms, especially around gender and sexuality. You're taking a critical lens. So you're looking at like power structures and questioning assumptions or underlying implicitly held or inexplicitly held assumptions and making them explicit and then questioning them. And then it has really broad applications. So like people who do this, they'll just do it to everything. They'll do it to art, science, comedy,
drone warfare,
the Book Club from Hell. They'll queer the shit out of the Book Club from Hell. So it's and then she doesn't do it in this article, but you can then intersect this with or combine it with other forms of, I guess, intersectional critical theory, like decolonization and First Nation stuff, or like feminist stuff, or I don't know, I'm sure there's a whole bunch of ways that you could do it. So you can get these concoctions of just like multi-lens critical analysis where everything is just being questioned through every possible non-heteronormative hegemonic constructed perspective. So that's the only other thing I'd say is like by her doing this, she's bringing in this entire philosophy along with her. That's she's starting from that basis, and applying this way of thinking to this situation with manned distance drones.
Yeah, and she's pretty upfront about that. Like, I wouldn't hold that against her.
No, I'm just explaining.
Yeah.
I'm not holding it against her. I'm just explaining that's part of her problem situation. It's still like, even saying all of this and just like getting on the same page about what her problem situation is, I'm just still like, there's still something missing for me where, yeah, I guess there's something missing in terms of like, I still don't see how, like, why she's spending her time doing this.
Because like I don't know, she'll get a PhD for it.
I guess so.
Part of the PhD program. So how about I open up by reading the abstract of this, and then we can go through it section by section. Killing with drones produces queer moments of disorientation. Drawing on queer phenomenology, I show how militarized masculinities function as spatio-temporal landmarks that give killing in war its orientation and make it morally intelligible. These bearings no longer make sense for drone warfare, which radically deviates from two of its main axes, the home combat and distance intimacy binaries. Through a narrative methodology, I show how descriptions of drone warfare are rife with symptoms of an unresolved disorientation, often expressed as gender anxiety over the failure of the distance intimacy and home combat axes to orient killing with drones. The resulting vertigo sparks a frenzy of reorientation attempts, but disorientation can lead in multiple and sometimes surprising directions, including, but not exclusively, more violent ones. With drones, the point is that none have yet been reliably secured, and I conclude by arguing that, in the midst of this confusion, it is important not to lose sight of the possibility of new paths and the hope of new directions. So, that's not very word salad in the context of this article. That's relatively clear. And if you felt that was word salad, then just wait. It gets a lot more convoluted from here on.
Yeah, and there's what, and we'll read some of them, but there is a very good thing about this article, which is the quotes and stuff that the person got. Like, that's like, some of the quotes are amazing.
So the quotes of drone operators, you mean?
Yeah, of drone operators are amazing. She's just wrapped them in her delivery mechanism is queer theory.
In some ways, it's a similar problem to the eroticizing HIV article we read, where the most interesting part is actually the transcripts of interviews with, in the case of that article, with bug chasers, in the case of this article, with drone operators. And then the problem is around that, the author trying to tell you what these people are actually saying. Whereas, maybe I'm just I'm not sufficiently queered, but I just kind of feel like the people are often saying what the words say. Like, they're actually saying what they mean, and they don't need recontextualization for me to understand what they're really talking about.
Yeah, that's fair. So, all right. So the three major sections. Did we? I just quickly read the. You
want to go from the introduction or start from orientations of killing?
Yeah, we really don't need to go to the introduction. Orientations of killing. So where she sort of sets up this idea of these axes. Around which we can.
Let's talk about the axes and the straight path of combat.
Yeah. So if you think, so what do you normally think of when you think of war and stuff? You think of a masculine, hyper,
dying in a heroic, doomed cavalry charge.
Maybe, the last
knowing that God and your king are smiling down upon you.
Yeah, or you think of 300 and these giant butch dudes all sort of homoerotically going into battle against the Persians, screaming as they go face to face with
other buff dudes,
buff dudes, and or somebody like in Kill Locker, where there's these bomb situations, but a physical person is going out. Like a physical man is going out there and detonating the bombs and stuff.
Importantly, a less buff man.
Yeah, so
less buff man. As time goes on, if 300 is the archaeological document, I think it is. Less buff. Warriors have been getting less buff And
although there was a peak with the Schwarzenegger versus who's got who played Rocky? Sylvester Stallone versus Schwarzenegger, like 1980s Americans.
That was true. That is true.
Like they went peak.
Navy SEALs, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone.
They're all pretty buff. They're at least as buff as Leonidas and his 300 warriors.
Yeah.
But they've got mad like machine guns and stuff.
Yeah.
But the one of the key things that stand out is one, it's always men. It's always butch dudes. You know, it's not some like little twink or twunk or chicken hawk going in there with.
It could conceivably. It could conceivably. Could be a twunk.
It could be a twunk.
Couldn't be a twink.
Couldn't be a twink.
Could be a twunk.
It could be a twunk, but it never is.
Preferably a bear.
Preferably a bear. Preferably a. I don't know, is it called like a silverback or something? Like an old bear?
An old bear. No, those are the generals. All of the generals are silverbacks. The spec ops snipers are twinks, and the frontline troops are twunks or bears. That's
yeah. Or the medics are
that's how
twunks. The frontline medics are twunks, but you need your bears out there.
That's very true, I think. Yeah. The frontline medic is the twunk because you need enough hunk to get onto the front lines, but you need to be twink enough to not be killing people, but to be helping your own.
Fundamentally a feminine thing to be doing.
That's a pretty twunk role.
Somebody. Yeah, that's very twunky, very. And then obviously you got these like. Not the kind of twinks that we like, the just like hypersexual twinks, like the gross kind of South Park World of Warcraft, Doritos munching, Red Bull smashing,
what do you mean gamers?
Fat twink gamer, in the drone seat. Yeah. Dropping bombs on Afghanis. And the twunks and the chicken hawks are, just look down their noses at those.
The chicken hawks are the military pilots.
Yeah, the
cruising
the military
for
pilots.
enemy chickens. Just swoop in on.
They're in the F-16s. The chicken hawks are in the F-16s. Like, look, we got one, boys. Swoops down. All right. So, anyways,
we'll successfully paused. Yeah.
Target neutralized.
I just want every listener to know I've spent a lot of time in the military, and everything I say is completely accurate.
So that's what we typically think of as hunky dude running, and there's this element of combat being out there in the enemy's territory or whatever, and they're protecting something back home. Yeah, and I'd even say that it was like sci-fi stuff, and so there's this distance intimacy thing, and then it's like home is supposed to be safe, and
safe, and you're protecting it,
and the women are back home, and the women are looking after things, looking after kids, and then when you get home, you'll have your woman there,
you'll have your twink.
You'll have your twink. You come home to your beautiful twink.
Okay, I'll stop. I'll let you talk about the article.
So there's two main axes of war that you'd say people in a heteronormative, masculine, I would say inexplicit background, archetypal structure of conceiving or conceptualizing war is you've got your home combat axis where home is feminine and combat is masculine. Yeah. And then you've got your distance intimacy axis where distance is feminine, and I'll talk about it, and intimacy is masculine. So talking about like the intimacy of the combat. So the ultimate form of masculine combat, the highest form of combat is hand-to-hand, bare knuckles. Like you're not even shooting from 30 yards away. You're like
not even using a knife. You're just
not even using
beating the shit out of a guy with a rock.
Like that's the scene in, I don't know, Saving Private Ryan or whatever, where it's like he's in the cottage wherever in the Western Front, and he comes face to face with the German soldier or whatever, and they get into fisticuffs, and the only way for him to kill the enemy is to just like punch his head in until he's victorious. That's ultimate maximum masculinity. Whereas distance, the further away you are from the enemy when you deliver kinetic energy into their face, the more feminine it is.
Yeah, it's such a feminine thing to do. It's the first thing I think of when I think of killing someone from a distance is women.
Would you ascend to that very circuitous way of explaining them?
That is basically how this entire article is oriented. And the author basically, because I think this distance intimacy home combat Cartesian plane is from another work. It's like a work on the psychology of combat. And this author's basically just taken this and gone, okay, this is basically true, or, it has a high degree of correspondence with reality. And then basically, if something doesn't fit onto this, she'll say, okay, well, it's going to start queering people. I guess, obvious question being, is any deviation from these axes going to be queering, or does it just suggest that maybe these axes don't perfectly represent reality?
Or is it an opportunity to queer our understanding of this? Or is the situation going to queer us?
Yeah, I guess all of that, though, the queering aspect is contingent upon these axes sort of encompassing everything, all self-conceptions of a soldier or anyone engaged in warfare. And I'm not saying they necessarily don't. I'm just saying they don't necessarily encompass everything. And if it's just actually an incomplete description of the world, then maybe drone warfare would just be used to complete it a bit more.
To be fair, I do agree with this analysis, because you think like Robin
I think
Hood,
it's pretty good.
Men in Tights, Pretty Twinkie, bows and arrows.
I also want to, you alluded to it earlier. So she talks about the straight path of combat, which is basically the hierarchy of how manly a warrior you are. And it basically, the further something deviates from killing someone in their home with your bare hands, sort of maximal combat, maximal intimacy, the more something deviates from that, the less respected it is in the combat hierarchy. Like that extreme is the ultimate straight path of combat, or the straight path of the warrior.
So who's the most masculine soldier in the US military? It's the SEALs, right? The SEALs, number one, Green Berets and SEALs, like these special ops units where they're going like into the heart of enemy territory, and they need to be prepared to go hand to hand with anybody they see and stuff like that. And they don't have any backup.
Are there units where they just refuse to use guns?
Yeah, well, they just send them in. It's like, you're not allowed to take a gun. You have to punch people. Yeah.
Yeah. So those axes are basically the most important part of this text, I think. Or it's around these axes that the entire thing hinges. So where do we go from here? Orientations of killing in war. I think that what she says is, okay, one, she acknowledges that other human-machine assemblages have existed in war. For example, the horse stirrup warrior spear assemblage.
There's a word there that we should probably explain a little bit. It's not a super complicated word, but do you want to
go for it?
Yeah, so in structuralism, an assemblage is essentially a heterogeneous group of it's a concept of a heterogeneous group of things that can be understood at the level of not the individual parts, but as a total thing. So, which is kind of makes sense.
Yeah,
I think it's a helpful concept, like systems and stuff. But one of the that I've got here, they form a dynamic fluid whole where agency is distributed across the network of interconnecting parts, rather than solely residing within the individual components. So it's used to understand social structures as shifting, interconnected, and not as necessarily fixed and hierarchical. And I think the big thing for structuralists is that when they talk about an assemblage, like an engine of a car is a system of interconnected components that can be understood to be, you can speak about the engine as such as a whole, and also its individual parts and how they connect together to form the engine as such. However, for structuralists, it's not just the object itself in isolation, it's how that also interacts within a social system. So correctly understood, I think an assemblage would be the engine plus how that thing intermixes with, social conceptions of masculinity, and having a V8 engine in your souped up, I don't know, like, Ford shooting down the highway, like the assemblage like pulls in these social aspects as well. So yes, do you want to keep on going?
Yeah. So she acknowledges that other assemblages have existed in war, but these assemblages have been, she calls them gendered, because what they allow is one to, she says, sink more comfortably along the path of that hierarchy, where at the top of the hierarchy is the very intimate combat warrior, like a person just killing someone in their home. So anything that allows you to really sit into that hierarchy is gendered. Previous assemblages have maintained genderedness in war, whereas drone warfare doesn't. It disrupts this. So I liked this part of the article. I thought it was pretty interesting, or just like a cool way to look at how bizarre a phenomenon drone warfare is. So, point being, on these axes, where do you put someone who's a drone pilot who wakes up in the morning in their home? They're part of a heterosexual family, wake up next to their wife, send their kids to school,
pat their kids on the head,
and say, you better have sex only with members of the opposite sex.
Dresses his son in blue and his daughter in pink.
Yeah. Daughter's not allowed to wear pants. He'll just lose his shit if that happens. And he goes
throws his son a football, a pigskin, as they walk out the door, drops them off at their school.
Yeah.
Well, the wife does, obviously.
Yeah, the wife does.
Yeah, not him.
He's going to work at the drone factory to get queered. He's gonna come back from work flying drones all day and bombing Afghani villages.
He's gonna go get posed at the drone factory.
He's gonna get posed all day after work drinks, and he's gonna come home a changed man. So how does this happen?
So he's come home a changed man. He's been taking hot pos loads all day.
I feel like this episode needs to be enjoyed in concert with our viral fantasies episode.
Yeah. It'll
continuous reference.
If our
pos aren't going to make sense.
Pos jokes don't make any sense. Go and listen to that.
They're barely.
First.
They're not even jokes. We just keep saying people are going to get posed and laughing at our own jokes, which is, I think, our greatest talent: finding our own jokes very funny. Yeah, it's our selling point. So, what was I even saying? Oh yeah, so where do you orient this person on these axes? So he's going to work, like it's just a day job. He just, like flashes his lanyard to get into the staff parking lot. Like, sits down in his seat in front of his monitor, might say hi to some co-workers, and just starts drone striking people for 10 hours a day.
Pulls out his little joystick.
Yeah.
And the entire time in the back of his head is he's thinking, wow, I'm really subverting the heteronormative masculine warrior archetype by simultaneously being at home and intimately in contact with people when I'm blowing them to pieces from the other side of the planet.
Yeah.
I'm being queered right now.
That's what he's thinking in his subconscious. In his conscious mind, he's probably just feeling disturbed. Because it would be an incredibly disturbing job. So
His wife just notices that his wrist is just getting a little bit more limp. Like, wait, it's got a little kick in his step.
Really gets into music.
Bye, honey. I'm going off to the drone strike the Afghanis. Bye.
Before you started that job drone striking people, you just listened to Five Finger Death Punch and punched holes in drywall all day. Now you're into
went to MMA practice and bow hunting with the boys. Now all you want to do is talk about your feelings. What's happened to you, John?
Yeah, you used to bow hunt with the boys. Now you just go and camp in the woods and fuck each other. So what? Because it in multiple ways it subverts these axes. Because there's the home combat binary which it subverts. Because sure, you're at home, but I mean you're kind of in combat, at least remotely. You are piloting something which delivers kinetic energy to people, and removes their limbs from limbs.
I think we're kind of bleeding into the next section, but to say to that... Oh, sorry, go on.
Oh, yeah. No, I was just going to say also the distance intimacy axes. I mean, in terms of distance, you're very far away from where kinetic energy is being delivered. It can be on the other side of the world, and you're in an air-conditioned office. But there is also this intimacy that you get because you'll be surveilling these people to make sure, this...
for weeks, potentially.
This glowing blob on your screen, on your infrared monitor, is who you think it is. And you'll know this person's, their routine. I think there was a quote from a drone pilot saying, yeah, I know at 5 a.m. this guy's going to get up and take a piss. You see him playing with his kids or saying goodbye to his wife when she goes somewhere. And then, you blow them up.
Yeah.
And you watch the aftermath of that too. Like you watch their body go cold.
Yeah.
As well.
Just be completely just torn to pieces, just spread all over the place.
Yeah.
And then you'll see the people come out and
double tap them.
Teabag them.
You were raised on Call of Duty. You're just an emotionally dead killing machine. It doesn't faze you at all.
Double tap. Head strike. So headshot. Yeah. There's
Do you reckon they just have those Unreal Tournament noises playing the entire time for staff morale?
Headshot.
Monster kill.
Killing spree.
Unstoppable. Can you imagine how badly that would fuck you up if you were just killing strangers on the other side of the world and your boss and sister are playing Unreal Tournament?
Oh my god, yeah.
Kill noises the entire time.
Yeah, that would be so discombobulating. Yeah, so the other thing that is interesting about this distance intimacy axis, which I do think is a really interesting. I think
to
give
this is
her
a useful
credit,
way to look at things.
I think these two axes are actually, there might be other axes that are worth trying to come up with. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but these two axes are, I think, reasonable axes to say that these are two axes that people use to, I guess, in a way, if not the masculinity, well, definitely part of it is masculinity.
I think
but
part
also,
of it's definitely masculinity.
But even if you said a woman being a female fighter, you'd be thinking, more respect for the woman who is out there on the front line, going fisticuffs with, ISIS, than the woman who's sitting back in the air conditioned office in Nevada, dropping bombs on
watching
barns.
porn and
flicking off all afternoon furiously between dropping bombs on villages.
I think just part of it is because, okay, they're probably not doing it through the internet because that'd have security issues associated with it. But because it's on a screen and video enabled, I associate it with the internet, and it just feels so much more deranged that on a screen you can just kill people for real. It's the world is it's the sort of thing that I kind of wish Jean Baudrillard got to see, because
he would have had a field day.
It is so intensely hyper real, because not merely is, well, it's that representation, say in video games, actually does seem to be informing the user interface of these systems. And these, the user interface of these systems also influenced video games. And these two things are just spinning into each other. It's just truly horrific. It's so horrifying.
And there's an aspect to which the entire distance intimacy thing gets kind of like twisted as well, as because on some level there's surveillance, which makes it very intimate, but also there is a way in which if you're really fixated on a screen, all your attention is at that screen, you can kind of get lost in the screen. And well, I don't know if they use goggles or headsets, but that making it extremely immersive, you could feel like subjectively your physical body might be in your air-conditioned office in Nevada, but your subjectivity, at least for some portion of your workday, is flying over a desert in Afghanistan. And and there's this transit, so there's this physical aspect of the intimacy distance axis, but then there's actually the subjectivity of it is out of alignment with the physical situation,
which happens to plenty of people, because it's the phenomenon of people watching like cartel execution videos on Twitter. And
why do people do that?
Getting really into that. And so obviously, like, it's delivering some pretty intense limbic drive that people keep seeking it out. And even if they say, I don't, I feel bad afterwards. Like, plenty of people really seem to be doing it. It was like war footage just seems to be this huge thing.
I can see why people want to see it. It's like...
so the bloodthirsty animal part of me understands it. I guess it's just like the rest of me feels so dirty after it's like if I'm scrolling social media and there'll just be a video of some guy getting shot in the head, just like jumping up out of nowhere. I feel filthy afterwards seeing it. Like, but that stuff can really affect you. But just imagine, so that's you passively watching it. Like, you're not the person who shot that guy in the head. Imagine if, you're the one who actually pushed a button and just like shot a missile at someone and blew it to pieces.
And then, you hit the wrong target. Like, you didn't hit the target, you just killed some random person.
Yeah, just some random person who was unknown.
Or maybe you hit the target, but you blow up their family as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So I can totally see why drone operators get really distressed. And I think so we can actually, this is something she talks about. I can also see how their distress is in some ways heightened by the fact that they're not in danger themselves.
Yeah.
That it sounds like people who are in combat and actually in, their own lives are threatened. They've got plenty of other problems, but they seem to have an easier time of accepting that they've killed someone or might have killed someone because they themselves were threatened. Like that person could have also killed them. Whereas it seems to be it's its own form of psychological torture to just be able to kill people with basically absolute impunity. Like, what is that person on the ground going to do about that drone kilometers above their head? They don't even know is there.
Yeah, these drones must be so far away because sometimes when they initiate the strike, it's like 5 seconds before it's delivered, the payload's delivered or whatever. Like, yeah, there's no chance. They have no chance.
Yeah, and I mean, you hear awful stories. This might be completely apocryphal, but I do recall hearing that in the I think it's in the tribal areas of Pakistan, like along the border with Afghanistan, where there was a lot of drone activity going on. The people there are scared of blue skies because it means the drones can see them, and like they look forward to overcast weather. It's like, well, we're a bit safer now. It's it's just such a horrific technology. It's like, we can do this to each other now.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's nuts. You've just like created trauma response avoidance behavior of blue skies for like an entire region of Pakistan. That's crazy.
Yeah. So we're now kind of in the hot pockets and joysticks section of
Yeah, it was sort of bled over
article.
a little bit.
Yeah, blur a little bit because the article does flow nicely on section to section.
So there's this discussion. Sorry, go on.
No. I was just going to say, like, leading on from what I was saying earlier about this distress the operators feel, the author here says that, in large part at least, that's because of this straight path of the warrior, where, you know, the most righteous person in killing, you know, the person with the clearest moral orientation in killing, is the person with the greatest combat and the greatest intimacy scores on those axes.
Yeah.
Like, that's a morally justified act of killing. And the further away you are and the safer you are, the more feminine your act of killing is. And therefore it's
more morally questionable.
Less morally justifiable.
Yeah.
And you're more culpable. That's where that can generate a lot of this discomfort in drone operators.
And not just for the operators, this section, and I think the subsequent section has a great discussion with these overtones of queer theory or whatever, of like social perceptions of this as well. So say like The Economist had an article titled "Dilbert at War," referring to Air Force pilots as the chair force. I've got a quote here. So yeah, there's this thing of like, you know, not only are the drone operators like potentially struggling with this impersonal way that they are delivering boatloads of kinetic energy to Pakistani villages on the other side of the planet from Nevada, but then they're also not really, at least at the time of writing, not really considered like real pilots or real, you know, combatants or whatever, by general public or whatever. So I'll just read this quote. It's a bit of, I'll see how I might stop, mate. It's a bit of a long one, but I might stop at some point. But another repeated motif cites the drone operators' bodies in the domestic sphere, juxtaposing their combat experience both temporally and spatially with running errands for their spouses or coaching a kid's soccer team. The heteronormative coding that relies upon the separation of the site in which the protecting occurs, i.e. combat, from the sites to be protected, i.e. home, grocery stores, soccer fields, fails to make sense of being, quote, deployed at station, you know, rather than deployed on site. Drone operator Matt Martin recalls his first mission flying an MQ-1 Reaper and dropping bombs, marveling that, quote, I had already been in on a kill, then I remembered that Trish had asked me to pick up a gallon of milk on the way home. Similarly, when Brandon Bryant, a former drone operator, gave a more critical interview about drone warfare, he received many hateful comments that emphasized the safety and often queerness of his body, such as, quote, I broke a fucking nail on the last mission, and, quote, maybe they should wear seatbelts. This is also evident in the frequent comparison of drone operators to adolescent video gamers, where the inference is that their lethal acts are also somehow immature and domesticated. If killing has some relationship to the pleasure of heterosexual sex and firing weapons can feel like ejaculation, a phenomenon noted by Grossman, then for the metaphor of the drone gamer, operating a drone is like masturbating to online porn. It might have its guilty pleasures, but it's nothing like sex with a, quote, real woman / killing in, quote, real combat.
I actually had the bit about video games and masturbating written down as well, because I thought that was it was a good example of she's actually she is saying something, but it also in such a way that it feels kind of frivolous.
Yeah. Can I read one more quote from the same section? It's again a bit of soap, and this was one of us where I was like, oh, is she being serious? Okay, so a little bit of a long one, but I think it's good. This has led the Air Force to try to address the state. So she's discussing like, the US Air Force was going to introduce a medallion for drones, and they got criticized as, they're not really like pilots, are they? You know, it can't be like a Purple Heart or something. They're not putting themselves at risk. Those sorts of questions. So this has led the Air Force to try to address the status issues by giving drone operators some of the insignia marks that marks, quote, real pilots in order to reorient operators' bodies. This is why drone pilots wear flight suits, and also why the Air Force began to give drone operators wings to wear on those flight suits, although the wings have a different design that distinguishes them as drone wings, i.e. not real wings. There are even fears that drone warfare appears cowardly to other countries. In the documentary The Islamic State, Vice by Vice, an ISIL press officer declared, quote, "Don't be cowards and attack with drones. Instead, send your soldiers, the ones we humiliated in Iraq." A special operations officer felt so strongly that drones were cowardly that he perceived Abu Musab al-Zakawi, whom he calls AMZ, the leader of Al-Qaeda in Iraq, as a more highly masculinized fighter. He argues that, quote, "If you see it through the enemy's eyes, you can understand that what they think. Even AMZ was right there hanging his balls out on the battlefield in terms of personal risk, leading his men in combat. The mark of the coward may be bearable if killing with drones is indeed relatively easy. Prosecuted from a distance, the operators cocooned in a desert trailer and taking pride in their pseudo-combat roles. The mutually exposed balls of the special forces and AMZ can go on fighting at the pinnacle of militarized masculinities, orienting combat despite the, quote, unmanned drones buzzing off stage, flown by operators whose balls are burned only by hot pockets."
I interpreted that bit as her trying to be funny. But
yeah, I think she was trying to.
The problem is, though, there's so much in this paper that I think is sincerely ridiculous that it just kind of falls flat. Like, you're just a bit confused as to whether she's trying to be funny or not.
I think she was trying to be, if not funny, ironic. At the very least, ironic.
Because there are so many parts of this where she seems to be really reaching to find some sort of phallic imagery slipping into people's speech, like people talking about. I think there's one section where where some soldier says
sovereignty
that he was, that he's exposed, like getting shot at, and she's like, "Aha! What he actually means is baring his genitals." And it's like, no, I'm pretty sure that's just common parlance. Like, if you're exposed, like you're not in cover.
Yeah, but that's part of the total assemblage of militarized masculinity. I guess so.
Jack. It felt actually, because we're reading Freud for an upcoming episode, it felt a bit like Freud just like jumping on any word that could conceivably mean anything remotely sexual and going, "Hey, I've got you there, mate. You've been thinking about sex again." It's like, listen, maybe, but maybe not.
It's not my fault that these words have multiple meanings in the culture.
Yeah. Yeah, and what you're touching on is one way in which drone warfare and the disorientation, the gender disorientation from drone warfare manifests itself. It manifests itself as gender anxiety. So these drone operators are insecure in their masculinity within the hierarchy of sort of combat masculinities, because they feel more feminine and they're trying to make themselves seem more masculine by talking about the psychological trauma they suffer. So they're trying to demonstrate, no, we too are actually in danger. So we're a bit further up the combat in part of the combat home axis. They're giving themselves medals to also try to feel more masculine. And I think she takes this as evidence that there is disorientation taking place because of drone warfare. Is there more you want to say about that section, or you want to go to in the loop but out of line?
In the loop but out of line, yeah.
Yeah. I feel like we've actually done a lot of this. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, it's a bit on the kill chain.
Oh, yeah, go for that.
Yeah.
Go for it, because I've got a... So actually, can I just read out a quote?
Yeah.
I just found a quote. Just an example of how she's trying to find penile metaphors everywhere, which certainly do exist in places, but a lot of the quotes feel like a bit of a reach. So I quote, she's quoting Brian Callahan, who's a former drone operator, who was talking to Spiegel Online in 2010. It sounds strange, but being far away and safe is kind of a bummer. The other guys are exposing themselves, and she's written... As an aside, again, note the vulnerable genitalia as orienting device. And that to me is still quite an honourable thing to do. So I feel like I'm cheating them. And again, like they're exposing themselves, like, exposing oneself to danger is just like a common I would say, non-penis valenced thing to say.
Mm.
Maybe it's more because I'm an unreconstructed heterosexual. Anyway, go on. I just came across a quote that I liked.
Yeah, no, yeah, and she does that repeatedly throughout. So there's this idea of the kill chain. You can think of it like the supply chain for, delivering kinetic energy into your enemy's body.
Originally a bolt thrower song.
Yeah.
Military style from
The bolt thrower. Oh my god, so satisfying. So you have this, the supply chain for death in war is very compartmentalized as a way to render the business of destruction unexceptional. But in modern military kill chains, the people doing the killing are usually sheltered from the morally murky decisions of target selection or the intimate familiarity that comes with surveillance, as well as from the gory aftermath of the corpses and destroyed buildings. And then she goes on to say, in contrast to that, drones produce what David Gregory calls a, quote, late modern killing chain, which now involves dozens of people spread across the planet, wherein drone operators and others involved in the drone assemblage can play at least some role in all the steps of the military killing process: surveillance, targeting decisions, firing, and also determining how many people were killed afterwards, after the strike. As Peter Asaro argues, quote, this places greater psychological demands on all three drone operator roles because it becomes more difficult to shift responsibility to others or to ignore the consequences of one's own decisions and actions. So I thought this idea that, if you're a soldier, you're way down the line in terms of hierarchy. You're receiving orders and orders and orders and orders, and then you're on the front lines. So, highly intimate, high combat masculinity, but also you're not necessarily seeing all the decisions that went into your particular deployment into a particular combat zone. Whereas, a drone operator is across the entire supply chain of the strike or that particular operation. They're part of the surveillance. They'll see the village for like weeks on weeks. They'll get a sense of all this, and then they isolate the target, and they deliver the payload, and then they got to watch afterwards and count the bodies, report back, and say yes, target killed, confirmed. So they're actually they've in a weird way like consolidated this killing supply chain, and you wonder like, oh yeah, is that compartmentalization of previous ways of conducting an operation actually allows people to compartmentalize like their role, whereas like tearing apart that compartmentalization and consolidating it and that one person seeing the entire thing happen, like, is what psychological effect is that having on them,
That would fuck you
in
up so bad.
combination with all the other parts. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have more to say about the in the loop but out of line chapter, or should we go on to queer killing?
May I just write there's one little quote that I thought was just with the real people stuff, just like so many of the quotes that she actually got were like pretty incredible quotes. So he says, even drone operators who are triumphant about their ability to kill, quote, bad guys report moments of difficulty. When one operator, for example, fires a missile at, quote, Rocket Man, who Martin says had it coming, and it must have been a terrorist target or something, an elderly man walks by just as the bomb detonates. Martin, the drone pilot, reports looking for the old man afterwards, seeing his body blown into the street, and then musing that, quote, by the time this war is over, I later reflected during dark moments, I was apt to have more innocent blood on my hands. Those were real people down there, real people with real lives. And he's just bombing them from Nevada. Yeah, so that's all. A bunch of other really good quotes that are in and of themselves, like from that section, almost worth just reading the article anyways. Like,
yeah. Although she pulls from a lot of sources. I'm not sure she actually did the interviews herself.
Yeah.
You could probably get the best bits of this article elsewhere without the academic language, or without like a particular strain of a particularly virulent strain of academic language. But I found the queer killing section had some of the worst academies in it.
I might have to let you take the lead on this one because I was a bit more on the confused end of.
Well, that's what I mean. Because there's this gigantic word salad paragraph near the start of this section, which essentially says any single totalizing view of drone warfare, that is to say, just describing it as good or bad, will be inaccurate, and we need more subtle ways of examining it. That's not a sentiment I disagree with. It's just she managed to string out what is a very simple concept to, I'm not sure how many hundred words, but hundreds of words of the most just grotesquely overwritten prose. This was the section where she really started to lose me, where I started to think, look, just pull your fucking finger out and write like a normal human being. It's just, she's actually hurting her case by making this so unnecessarily hard to pass. What else is there? She says like drones aren't innately queer, but they could serve queer politics by offering new lines out of the quote, main roads of killing in war that formerly seemed so fixed. So it's back to what we were saying earlier, how the disorientation from drone warfare is not something that will necessarily lead to more inclusive worlds, which is, she actually does say more inclusive worlds, but they could be used to undermine militarized masculinities and open ways to more inclusive worlds. She then, in the, I guess, this section felt a lot sillier because she seems to be trying to be more practical. She says, okay, here's some practical advice on how to promote the queering and disorientation from drone warfare. I quote, towards this goal, it would help to emphasize drone disorientations by continuing to make drone things and bodies appear in public, all along the kill chain from civilian contractors to operators to emergent patterns of life that cannot be allowed to live. Okay, so you draw attention to what it means to conduct drone warfare. How do you do this? She just gives examples of one woman plays, single act one woman plays about drone warfare, which to me, okay, so yes, everyone exists within their own particular social context. This just felt so incredibly academic. It's like, how do we reach the public and let them know about drone warfare? One person single act plays about being a drone operator. It's like that is not going to reach anyone who doesn't already care about this.
Yeah. Maybe there'll be I'm not really like tuned into popular cinema, so maybe there's already been a main box office movie about the plight of the drone operator, but I'm not aware of it.
Seriously, like in this, you are competing with the Call of Duty franchise. So I haven't played. I don't remember the last Call of Duty I played. Like this was years and years and years ago. But Modern Warfare 2, like the old one. One of the kill streak rewards was you got to like pilot a rocket from a drone and kill people with it, and it felt great. Felt so good. Great graphics. Really, really good when you like hit someone, you see their body fly away. It'll make like the hit marker noise. You get this little number pop up on the screen. It's like, you got 100 points.
So satisfying.
You're competing with that. It's like a fucking one person play is not going to cut it. You got to be the hit marker that noise makes you salivate like Pavlov's dog.
It's like a little squirt of dopamine. If I just heard someone go or whatever the noise is, you did a good version of it. Like just in public, I'd probably start like, oh fuck yeah, let's go.
Yeah. Yeah, it's your activation signal. You just pull out a gun and start doing something that I probably shouldn't say on this episode because of YouTube content moderation. Yeah. But you're competing with that, like with these things that are trying to code drone warfare as something in some way desirable, or as something
that's fun.
Yeah, that's fun. It's not only something you tolerate, but it's fun. This is good. You're meant to want this.
Yeah.
So the practical advice bit, you got to do better. You got to compete with how engaging, at least for men, killing strangers on the internet and video games is.
Yeah. Makes me wonder how much funding EA Games got from the DOJ, the US DOJ.
I mean, Call of Duty was
creating,
Activision.
Oh, Activision, yeah, Activision, or whatever, these game studios, when they're making these sorts of games, if they get like if they actually get funding to do this by the US, like whatever, Department of Defense, I just wouldn't be surprised, like it's just such good propaganda.
Yeah. It is such good propaganda because it makes war look so fun.
Yeah, I guess
it makes it look like such a blast. Like you're just there with your buddies, gunning down bad guys. There's none of the boredom, which apparently you have a lot of as a soldier, of just standing around doing nothing. There's not much of the getting screamed at. There's none of the physical discomfort of actually becoming the human Terminator.
Yeah, or like seeing your friends get blown up and stuff.
Yeah,
and inevitably all of these are from the point of view of like the Americans. And
why would you want to play as the bad guys?
Yeah, why would you want to lose?
Yeah,
but yeah, so it's like you don't see like when for example in the mission in Call of Duty 2 or Modern Warfare, they don't show the part where they're monitoring the village for 2 weeks and you see the target running around with their daughter or whatever and like build a sensor report. You just get the fun bit.
Yeah.
So there is definitely if we ever read the Jacques Ellul book, is Jacques Ellul a book on the propaganda? Like, it would be interesting to do like a Ellulian analysis of Modern Warfare 2. For
Modern
like
Warfare 1 and 2
priming
are classics, though.
priming a generation of Western
breath.
teenage boys for wanting to, or at least acclimating them to drone warfare and things. Yeah, so it's really interesting. I don't really have much else to say about this specific book itself. If there were any other questions, the value of this sort of language-based analysis or narrative analysis, is there value in what she did? I found there was some like interesting parts of. I thought they were interesting.
I wouldn't say it's valueless.
Yeah.
I feel like it's what I said towards the beginning of the episode. I would have found it much more interesting, and you probably would have learned much more if she'd done some sort of analysis of previous times in history when some new combat assemblage appeared or some new technology which really, really changed the battlefield. And even just going so basic as to ask, okay, were there actual queering effects? Because in this article, she just assumes that that things are queered in the way she says they are. The thing is, we actually do have data from history that you can go back to and analyze to see, okay, in the first place, is the assumption about things being queered or, the disorientation leading to some queering effect, is this actually the case? Does this happen? And then can also, okay, if that does happen, you can examine what did happen the previous times these sort of very, very, very new technologies came about. So I feel like that would have been much more valuable rather than what is maybe, there's a core of something interesting going on here. What's the effect on psychology and then in society broadly of drone warfare? But around that, a lot of the actual analysis feels to me like word games, like defining words slightly differently to how they are defined in day-to-day speech, and then drawing an ever larger series of, or taking an ever larger series of leaps to kind of make these word games conform to how she already thinks this theory should function. And that aspect of it, like, I have an appreciation of these kind of word games, and I'm certainly not averse to enjoying, I don't know, like a degree of continental silliness. Like I did, as annoying as I found his prose, I enjoyed reading Baudrillard, but I feel like there's actually more going on with him in the core than just word games. I feel like this article relies a bit too much on word games. It probably needs a bit more substance.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think, the core ideas are interesting, and she could have done much more interesting stuff with it.
Yeah.
But she already kind of lost the battle before she even got on the battlefield by just it's sort of the assemblage that she's a part of, the
cathedral
sort
assemblage,
of intersectional structuralist literature academic assemblage. It sort of hamstrung her ability to take what is actually a pretty interesting idea and deliver it much more effectively.
Yeah, it's a fantastic idea.
Dog whistling going on with like her word salad, you know.
Yeah, well, the dog whistling is only taking place because the writing is so unclear. Like, I don't even think it's you know, she's trying to hide a meaning in some way, you know, trying to build an esoteric understanding of the text into it. I think it is actually just, this is how you're expected to write in certain
in that context. Yeah. So I overall like enjoyed it, notwithstanding the word salad.
One thing
just because those core ideas I thought were worthwhile.
Yeah. One thing that's interesting is how drone warfare has changed from when this was written to now, because particularly with the war in Ukraine at the moment, so drone warfare is being used extensively. And before that, I think there was a war between, what was it, Armenia and
Azerbaijan.
Yeah, where drone warfare was used.
2019, I think, or 20 it started.
Yeah, but particularly in Ukraine, there's a real arms race in just how cleverly and how cheaply they can use drones to, you know, whichever side's advantage.
Mm-hmm.
And I find looking at that through the lens of this this distance intimacy home combat set of coordinates is pretty interesting, because I think there actually are real differences in how that drone warfare is functioning. It has evolved since 2015. How, granted, she acknowledges in this article her focus is just on nation states, particularly the US, being able to fly a predator drone over an area and drop missiles on it. Whereas in Ukraine, a lot of the drone warfare is performed with really, really cheap, like quadcopter drones that are either used to drop grenades on people, or the suicide drones that just fly into stuff. And that's different because you'll have... I'm not sure if, you know, people are actually operating these in the field, but at the very least, the operators are in greater danger because they're just the battlefront is closer to them, and you can actually fly these things into into civilian buildings. And so I feel like that's changing it. That feels like it's integrating this drone warfare more into that masculine hierarchy, because now the operators are getting to be in greater danger. Like, they're moving away from home, or at least home in this context is becoming more dangerous. Like, it's closer to combat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess for those smaller retail drones, there is a lot more limitations on how far you can actually operate the drone. So you do have to be much closer than Nevada to Afghanistan. Yeah. Another aspect of it is the immersiveness. Like with these new drones, they're in like these racing drones. You actually put the goggles on, and they've got a camera on the little quadcopter drone, and so they're like right in it. It's like a video game, borderline, like zooming through, and so it actually rewards this skill of being able to
being a zinned up zoomer.
Yeah, and deliver these payloads. Another interesting part of it is the anti-drone technology. Yeah, some of it is just like cage stuff, but some of it is like they've got these guns that actually take a fair bit of skill to isolate the drone and like figure out how to pinpoint it and shoot it on route, and they have to be some of the footage that I saw was, you know, they're like right in the thick of the combat. You know, they'll spot the drone, run out, get on their knees with the launcher off their shoulder, and they're out exposed for 30 seconds or something whilst they're like tracking the drone. And so, yeah, it is bringing it into closer quarters. It's kind of weird human drone, anti-drone, close proximity assemblage.
Yeah, I feel like that phenomenon too further solidifies that the hegemonic masculine aspect of warfare, because the drone operator in some way is rendered even more, or even further from the masculine intimate combat warfighter, because that person in the field is having to run out and expose themselves to the drone and is then killing the drone in inverted commas, so risking their own life to destroy the drone, whereas the drone operator is still at a distance piloting a drone and not in as much physical danger. So I feel like that actually further within this paradigm increases the masculinity of the soldier in the field.
Yeah.
So it further codes this.
The
it further
valor
solidifies
and bravery.
the masculine hierarchy.
Yeah, of the human body versus the machine. And then there's this interesting, like, to further that aspect of intimacy. There's I think it was quite famous. It sort of went viral. I'm sure there's other footage like it of I think in this case it was a Ukrainian drone that like spotted a lone Russian soldier in like a trench and had a payload on it, and they could have dropped a bomb like right on this like guy. Only looked like he's 20 or something, and but he's wounded, and he's like, no, please, like sort of signal to the drone like, please don't. And then like the drone, and this might just be propaganda from the Ukrainian side, but I'm inclined to think that it was real. Like basically didn't kill the guy, actually like guided the soldier out of the trench and like actually brought him to the Ukrainian side. I don't know if they took him as a prisoner or something, but got him out of active combat and used, like, you can see the guy's facial expression and stuff. It's an incredibly intimate thing to do. And the guy, even if I remember the film footage correctly, at one point got down in, I don't know, like a crater or something, and took out. Oh no, I think they dropped the drone came back. They put some smokes on it, some cigarettes, and it flew the cigarettes out to the guy. He gave him he had to have a break and have a cigarette. It was like this intense like intimacy at a distance in the middle of the theater of war. Yeah, it really is I think drones in our lifetime are kind of delivering the same level of change to war and the conceptions of war as maybe like tanks did back in like the World Wars.
Or it could be even bigger, because one aspect of it, like a very clear aspect of more modern wars that have been taking place in the drone era, like the biggest, like the clearest examples I can think of are Ukraine and then Israel in Gaza, is the fact that the psychology of the home populations is taken to an even greater extent. Like, you have to basically assume whenever you log onto social media and see anything to do with a war, that it is part of a psychological operation that is, if not directly initiated by one of the governments or one of the groups involved, then at least that's the origin, and it's filtered through to whichever person, or perhaps even whichever one of your friends is now sharing this information. Because these wars are so spectacular now. I say spectacular in the sense of a spectacle. Like, so much of the combat, in a sense, is taking part in the minds of the home population by the dissemination of these images, dissemination of these videos. With generative AI, probably just the outright fabrication of these things as well, with the distribution of particular statistics, the arguing over the existence of particular statistics, whether they mean something or not. All of this is also a battlefront taking place within your mind. And that's an aspect of drone warfare as well. That, I think, just because this author needed to limit her scope, but it's not really talked about here. Just the fact that these drones do have, like a fairly good camera attached to them, and this footage can then be distributed on Twitter or wherever else to to further the war. You know, one
or
side's
even body
aims in
cams,
the war.
yeah, body cams and drone footage and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's obviously always really heavily selected, you know, and filtered by whatever war propaganda, or like public relations, agenda. A good one is like, well, I'm sure that, no, not sure, like definitely like part of, you know, the Israel-Palestine conflict, current one is like both sides releasing, like both like Hamas and Hezbollah and stuff releasing their own footage and of things, and also the IDF releasing their footage, both body cam footage or footage from the top of tanks or drones. And the one that stands out for me in particular is like when one of the leaders of Hamas, I can't remember his name, like arm blown off, like in like some, like rubbles of this apartment, and you see this drone and he like throws a stick at the drone or something, and it's like, okay, so it's this guy and his body in a completely destroyed apartment, and versus, you know, one or more drones that could just like come in and just detonate, blow it. Like it's just, there's no pretense of somebody being able to defend themselves against these machines when it comes down to this sort of thing. And it kind of makes me feel like, like in Halo Combat Evolved or whatever, I'm sure there's similar things, where there's those flying robots and they just like come, like they can get into every nook and cranny, like you can't hide from them. And these drones, they're getting up to the point where, like realistically, if there was like a
so
drone
much worse
strike,
than those, though.
yes, a drone swarm attack on, your suburb, like you're not hiding from it. They're coming into your house, like they're coming into your kitchen, and they very precisely can be like maneuvered around your house. It's like, so it's a terrifying level of intimacy that these drones have. And then at the end of the day, if you defended yourself against one, there's another 100 waiting to come down, and you can't do anything about it, and you're not going to stop the people who are like sending the drones into your house.
Yeah, and not only that, but the drone footage itself is going to be used in psychological warfare. To be beamed around the world to further one side's particular war aims. Yeah, it's like it's a slight tangentially related topic, but just anyone who is sort of enjoying the warfare infotainment on, I think Twitter is one of the worst places for it. People just watching combat footage and forming strong political opinions on the basis of that. I'd just like to remind everyone that these images and videos didn't simply appear. Someone ultimately chose to edit and upload them, and they intend for you to watch it and interpret it in a certain way. I just really encourage anyone feeling like they're breaking out of the media's programming or something by mainlining war footage on Twitter. It's like, you're not as smart as you think you are. It's just like, it's a foreign government or your government ultimately disseminating these images, and you're just letting them shape your mind.
That's a really interesting aspect. This there's this idea that every business now is a media business because of just how easy it is to create your own media. Like you can have a podcast studio in your bedroom and you can live stream and chat to your audience and stuff. So really key pillar of modern, even small businesses, SMEs, is like, well, you essentially should have like a media strategy. Well, that goes for each individual soldier or platoon or whatever now. It's like, like if you want, you could imagine the, drone team and their pilots having like, I don't know, like a chat room, they were all on Slack, and then they're like, okay, what are we going to put on our Twitter account today? Broadcast about.
The spectacle only deepens.
So it is, the information age, I guess, is so profoundly strange. And we're just at the birth of this, because I'd say drones are fundamentally an information age, like technology. They're enabled by high speed communications technology, the network and stuff. And just, so they're an information age technology. And this psyop stuff on social media and all that same thing. So I'd say there's an interesting conversation around there if you wanted to mix it with that conversation from last week about the internet's effect on bug chasing and like enabling that sort of stuff. There's another instance of internet technologies shaping, in this case, like warfare.
It's look, the world is only going to get weirder. It's not going to become easier to understand. I'm fairly confident in that.
It's crazy.
Look, maybe there's a solar flare and it just wipes out almost all of our electronics, but barring some black swan event, things are just going to get stranger. And I don't really know how to deal with that.
I don't know how to deal with it. Maybe we just need to queer stuff up a bit more.
We just need to queer stuff up a bit more, or
get paused.
Get paused, or or become very, very consciously parochial in many respects. Like, just read about
family,
very local news. Yeah, have a family, care about them to a much greater extent than
read your local suburbs,
some
newspaper.
Foreign conflict. Just spend time with your co-located family and friends, besides your parasocial relationship with Jack and Levi on the book. Yeah, but I actually, because I do think about this, I actually do think like the only way that I'm going to stay sane is saying, all right, I'm just going to focus on.
Wait, when were you sane, Jack?
Wife and kids. Sane. Oh no, it's graded on a curve, and things are only going to get more insane. Just focus on your family and the friends you can see in real life and things that you can verify with your own eyes. Because the world is not going to become less spectral and less of a maze of mirrors.
Yeah, this screen that you're looking at or that you're using to listen to us through, I think one way to think about it, I visualize it as there's this enormous network of, now there's something like 5.5 billion people or something on the internet. Eventually that'll be close to 8 billion people once it fully rolls out. So we haven't even seen the full rollout of the internet, and that's what we've already got. And each one of them has their own little life and has like a window onto the rest of the network, onto the other 5 billion people.
Basically the unconscious of the human race.
It's a little window that it will give you the ability to peer onto the entire civilization of 5 billion plus people from hundreds, if not thousands, of different like language groups and cultures and backgrounds and socioeconomic groups. And you can literally see like the lives of people who, I know, inherited $100 million all the way down to like, some guy who herds goats in, in Mongolia somewhere. You can see it all. Yeah. And it's not clear to me that, like, on the one hand, that ability to do that is amazing. Like, it's incredible. It's the scale and enormity and the breakthrough of being able to have contact with all of that is, I think, really positive, largely speaking. But you can definitely see the negative parts of it if like you're always looking through the window, you're always looking through the portal onto the rest of the civilization, and you're not carefully curating and time boxing your time in the window, and like step back and just enjoy your little part of existence.
Yeah, these are all things that like this is not the author's fault for not including them, because these are much more modern aspects of drone warfare. I would say modern drone warfare is, I think, it's a very kinetic, very pointed end point of some of these currents, but it's a really interesting area of exploration that like the author did. She did a reasonable job of going through it. Do you want to finish up with saying, would we recommend this and so on?
Would I recommend it? I think that our conversation about it was better than the actual thing.
I think so. Yeah, I think if you've listened to us talking about it, I probably wouldn't recommend it, because it's as cool as the premise is. It's just the
execution is bad.
The execution and that way of writing that it's this author didn't come up with this way of writing herself, but it feels like it's expected, like it's just required to be taken seriously in certain parts of academia, and I think that's a real shame because I think it actually makes these ideas, some of which are really interesting, just much harder to interface with because they're written in such a way as to be much more unclear.
I think like the core idea is good, but yeah, it just really makes it hard to access. You could imagine actually a very interesting book exploring this entire idea of like socio-cultural axes of war and how, like, whether it's queer ideas or other things interact with those different axes. It's like a really I think it's a great premise of an idea, and she's obviously had something interesting to say about just the delivery of it just makes it inaccessible. And I know, as you said, it's a part of that subculture. But I'd just say that subculture is like, in instances like this where they actually do have good ideas, they're actually doing themselves a disservice in terms of if they want those ideas to spread.
Because it really irritates me because perhaps I'm just too idealistic about research, but I want this stuff to be freely available and freely accessible. And in terms of freely accessible, I don't only mean, the great work of certain sites like Sci-Hub, which allows people to access for free publicly funded academic research that is being paywalled by certain very unscrupulous companies. So there's that angle, but also just in terms of being able to access it intellectually. If works containing interesting ideas are written in a sufficiently inaccessible way, then what's this information doing? It's masturbatory. It's just going to be other people who already agree with you reading it and going like, oh yeah, fuck yeah, love it. I'm going to write my response to this, which is going to be just agreeing with it in similarly revolting language. That's just not what I think the Academy is for in its best guise. Sure, there are certain things like some extremely abstract pure mathematics papers that you probably cannot make this accessible to someone like me. I'll look at it and go, yeah, that's just totally meaningless to me. But plenty of stuff, this article being a case in point, can be made accessible to, I think, a person of perfectly average intelligence. Or not even intelligence, as someone who has not learned this particular academic language. Because there are plenty of really smart people I know who are like electrical engineers who have just never spent time with this kind of language, who'll take one look at it and go like, this actually means nothing to me.
Yep, I basically agree. So, yeah. Should we wrap up? Say, support us on Patreon.
Yep.
Join the Discord. Shout outs or anything, Jack?
Shout outs. Shout out to Monopoly Man who DM'd me on Discord recently about his disagreements with the Fiat Food episode. Like extensive disagreements about the minutiae of economics and so on.
Oh, nice.
Big shout out to that kind of dedication.
Oh, nice. Well, hopefully he can correct some of our errors in our thinking. So as lay people, I think I'm well and truly ready for another hit of caffeine. So
yeah, I'm surprised we got almost 2 hours out of this.
Oh yeah,
I was worried we would not have enough to say.
If they dragged out their writing of the paper, we dragged out our episode. We got way more juice out of that than it deserved.
Getting paused.
We got paused pretty hard. All right.
Thanks
for listening.
See you next time. Thanks for listening.